You run your tongue across the tip of the brush, shaping it to a perfect point. It's routine now. Dip, lick, paint, repeat. The bristles slick with luminous paste, glowing faintly green in the low factory light. The air is thick with the smell of varnish and dust, but you hardly notice anymore. You're laughing with the other girls. Girls like Grace and Molly and Catherine, each bent over tiny clock faces, steady as surgeons. The work is delicate, almost dainty. You feel proud, important. Outside, the United States has just entered the Great War. It's 1917, and factories like this one in Orange, New Jersey, have transformed overnight. The dials you paint will be used by soldiers in France, in trenches, in the dark, where every second might matter. The paint you use is called undark, a luminous mix of radium and zinc sulfide. It clings to your clothes, settles in your hair, makes your teeth glimmer when you smile. You're told it's safe, even healthy. You believe them. But here is what history knows. Radium had been discovered less than 2 decades earlier by Marie and Pierre Curie in 1898. It was immediately hailed as a miracle element, capable of shrinking tumors, illuminating objects without heat, and even reinvigorating the human body. Early 20th century society embraced it with the same blind wonder given to electricity a generation prior. It was bottled in tonics, baked into beauty creams, even added to chocolate and toothpaste. The science was still in its infancy, and the risks were largely unknown or ignored. By 1917, the United States Radium Corporation, USRC, was one of several companies contracted to produce luminous military instruments. Dial painting became a booming occupation, particularly for young women. The work was considered skilled, patriotic, and unusually well paid for women, especially those without formal education. In training, the girls were taught a technique called lip pointing, where the brush is brought to the mouth to shape its tip before painting. This single act, repeated hundreds of times per day, would seal their fate. They had no protective equipment, no warning signs. The chemists and male supervisors, by contrast, worked behind glass barriers, handled the element with tongs, and wore lead-lined aprons. But to the girls, undark was magic. Molly Maggia, one of the first and most tragic victims, began to feel pain in her jaw within a year. Her teeth fell out. Her breath turned foul. Ulcers bloomed across her gums. Doctors were baffled. In 1922, she died. Her death certificate listed syphilis, a diagnosis that even then carried shame. But she was not alone, and her story was only the beginning. In the dim quiet of the factory, the girls keep painting. The brushes keep being licked. The glow keeps spreading. The ache in your mouth is sharper now. You think of Molly, how she wasted away, her jaw eaten from the inside. You remember the smell, the blackness at her gums, the way she covered her mouth when she laughed, until she couldn't laugh at all. She was 24. At her funeral, her skin still shimmered faintly. You rub your own jaw. Something shifts beneath the skin. You're not the only one. Across the factory, girls complain of aching legs, cracked spines, rotting teeth. One by one, they vanish from their benches. Rumors spread like sickness. Jawbones collapsing, holes opening in the roof of the mouth. Diagnoses no one dares say aloud. Still, the supervisors insist it's not the paint. They say you're imagining it. Hysterical. You must have poor hygiene or syphilis. And when you raise your voice, you're told to be grateful. Thousands of girls want your job. By 1924, the glow has turned to rot. This is where the historian must step in. Grace Fryer, a former dial painter, becomes the face of resistance. Educated, articulate, and determined, she begins documenting everything: payslips, medical records, eyewitness accounts. For 2 years, she searches for a lawyer willing to take her case. Most are too afraid to go up against the United States Radium Corporation, a firm entwined with government contracts and scientific prestige. Eventually, she finds one. In 1927, Grace and 4 other women, Edna Hussman, Catherine Schaub, Albuena Larice, and Quinta McDonald, file suit. They are dubbed the Radium Girls. At the time, the law barely recognizes occupational disease. Workers' compensation is still new, fragile, and easily denied. Worse, the girls are already dying. Time is not on their side. In the courtroom, the defense paints them as promiscuous, unstable liars. Medical experts, many paid by the company, argue that radium is harmless in small doses, but the evidence is mounting. Radiographs show bones riddled with holes. Teeth fall from mouths mid-testimony. One girl is too weak to sit. She testifies from her deathbed. Public opinion begins to shift. Journalists publish harrowing accounts, illustrations of skeletal faces beneath glowing skin. One reporter describes the courtroom as smelling faintly of decay. And still, the company denies everything. Why? Because to admit guilt would shatter more than their reputation. It would undermine the entire radium industry. Cosmetics, tonics, therapies, products sold across America as wonder cures, all would be cast into shadow. As Grace stares down the men who once paid her to paint with poison, one question lingers. If they knew, why didn't they stop it? And if they didn't, why were they so careful with their own hands? The courtroom falls silent. Outside, the factory still hums. Dials still glow. But the truth is no longer quiet. The dial is still in your drawer. The one you painted the day before Molly fell ill. It no longer ticks, but the numbers still shimmer faintly. The green untouched by time. You wrapped it in a silk handkerchief years ago. Yet even now, in the quiet, it glows softly through the fabric. You don't dare throw it away. It's a piece of you. By 1928, the world is listening. Public outrage forces the United States Radium Corporation into settlement. The women are awarded damages and lifelong medical coverage. But for many, lifelong will mean only a few more years. The damage is done. Their bones are permanently poisoned. Their blood tells time now. Still, the case sets a precedent. It becomes one of the first in American history to hold a company accountable for the health of its workers. It reshapes labor law, galvanizes the growing industrial safety movement, and cracks open the door for later victories: OSHA, environmental protections, and safeguards around nuclear work. But these victories come slowly, unevenly, and always at a price. In Ottawa, Illinois, another radium plant continues operations well into the 1930s. Despite mounting evidence, the company denies the risks. More women will die. It will take decades before proper radiation safety protocols are universally enforced. And what of the girls? Molly is buried without a jaw. Grace dies in 1933, still fighting, still writing letters. Some of the women outlive their court cases, but not their pain. They are forgotten in waves, remembered briefly, in headlines, then eclipsed by war, by politics, by the next tragedy. Yet their bones continue to whisper. In the later years, scientists exhumed the remains of several dial painters to study the long-term effects of radium. Their bodies still register radiation, even half a century later. The glow persists, quiet, deadly, impossible to erase. Your story does not end in a courtroom. It ends in a principle that no company, no matter how powerful, may feed profit with silence. That work done in patriotism, in pride, in innocence, should never come with a death sentence. And that justice, even delayed, leaves a mark. The dial in your drawer no longer marks hours, but it marks something else. What it cost to learn the truth. What it took for your voice to matter. For your pain to mean something more than a line on a death certificate. You once shaped your brush with your lips. You once painted stars. And now your name lives in the shadows of law books, etched into medical ethics, carved into memorials that stand quiet in towns too small to remember. But we remember. We remember the glow, we remember the rot, and we remember the women who painted both.